Man, National Signing Day was a lot of fun. But all I want for Christmas is a new Miami Hurricanes starting quarterback.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday. We made it. I'm Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, longtime South Florida sports radio vet, and contributor to allhurricanes.com. Thank you so much to the everydayers for making this live episode of Locked On Canes your first listen or whatever listen here. I know it's been a busy day on this Friday. We are available free wherever you get your podcasts, and we are available free on YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. All right, my friends. Miami is doing a great job from a talent acquisition standpoint, right? You think about the way that they've addressed the defensive line, combination of recruiting and the transfer portal, experienced defensive tackles, Marley Cook out of Middle Tennessee, C.J. Clark out of NC State have landed at Miami. The Hurricanes landed their center to replace Matt Lee, and Zach Carpenter from Indiana, who I think is a really good one. Savion Riley, the safety coming in, just had a top 5, top 3 class of 2024. The early signees have been finalized as of a couple of days ago, but we need that quarterback, okay? And now the wait continues. And hello, Merry Christmas or Merry Flipmas to all, depending on which you celebrate or both. And yeah, I appreciate you, Robbie, listening to me on WQAM earlier today. That's why I'm doing Locked On Canes later than I usually do, because I was on radio from 10 a.m. To 2 p.m. every day. Hello to some of the other everydayers out here. You guys are awesome, and happy holidays out there to everyone. So I continue to hear very encouraging signs. I don't want to get ahead of myself and proclaim anything because, again, when people proclaim things before they happen, sometimes you get situations like Cormani McClain last year. A lot of people were trying to proclaim Jeremiah Smith to Miami before things went down the way that they did on Wednesday. So I try to keep a level-headed, business-like approach to this stuff and not over-deliver here, but I continue to hear very positive feedback on where the Miami Hurricanes stand with their top transfer quarterback target, Cam Ward. The latest of these indications, I think this man is talking to some of the same people that I talk to here. If you're looking for some positivity, because sometimes when you hear rumors and reports, you're wondering, well, who is that person reporting it? Is that another blogger? Is that a serious reporter? Barry Jackson from the Miami Herald. He doesn't always say what you want to hear when it comes to Miami stuff, but you know he's a reporter who's been doing this for a very, very long time, and he is a professional, right? I trust Barry Jackson to double check his sources, dot his I's, and cross his T's. He's not irresponsible when he comes out and reports things. And even Barry Jackson from the Miami Herald, within the past half hour, 25 minutes ago, wrote this on X. He said, I've heard some optimism on Cam Ward and the University of Miami and a potential marriage between the Washington State transfer quarterback and Miami. He writes in parentheses, but to aggregators, he says this is not a report or a prediction. He continues, but I have heard encouraging things. We'll see. Decision announcement expected in the next several days. And again, okay, so and we got to keep in mind, going back the last couple of weeks, Cam Ward and his father, who does a lot of interviews, have always said decision by or around Christmas, right? And I know a lot of us, especially before National Signing Day, because I really did feel some pressure to try to land a quarterback before National Signing Day, because that could have really helped your momentum and your recruiting. Who knows? Maybe things could have gone differently with Jeremiah Smith if you'd already had your quarterback in place. But once National Signing Day came and went without Miami finding a new quarterback, I don't feel quite as much pressure to get it done quickly. I still want this done before Christmas if possible, but we're sitting here on December 22nd, and we may be days away from Miami landing a new transfer quarterback. So that was what Barry Jackson of the Miami Herald had to say about it. I've got some more sentiment on both sides, on the Miami side and on the Florida State side. Okay, guys, you can definitely, with the way the Florida State insiders, and we'll talk about what's going on with Florida State, by the way, today. Florida State, they just took a significant step today in trying to get the hell out of the ACC. Florida State, they're doing a lot of things right now that don't involve recruiting and transfer portal, but when it comes to the Cam Ward pursuit, it does seem like the Florida State reporters are starting to throw up the white flag of surrender here, that they may realize this probably isn't going to happen for them, where the optimism continues to grow on the Miami side and it seemingly continues to shrink on the Florida State side. Now, another great dude who I respect, good reporter who spoke on the Ward situation. I think yesterday, this quote comes from is D Money from Canes Insight. He said that Miami, in his words, is in the best position to land Cam Ward. He said, quote, Miami or the NFL. He said, I don't think Florida State is in it. I think this weekend Miami will get it done. Those are his words. And that's one of those growing feelings out there that hopefully, I mean, what would be better under your tree than, forget about what do your relatives give you? Socks, T-shirts, like what would be ties? What would be better than having a new starting quarterback under your tree this coming weekend, which is what we're hoping for. Here's one of the latest things I gathered from a Florida State insider, Brendan Sonnone from Florida State's 24/7 site. He wrote this update yesterday. He said the Cam Ward camp was still deliberating and discussing options as of the last day or so ago. I'm not convinced, he said, that things have materialized a ton with Florida State in the last few days. Either they've kept very quiet or there's minimal headway, he says. In addition to FSU and Miami, other options for Ward include the NFL and Ohio State as a dark horse. Now, I haven't heard as much Ohio State buzz in the last several days. Not to say it's impossible, okay? And I'm sure Ohio State would love nothing more than to try and get revenge for, even though they did land JJ, Miami landed a ton of recruits that were formerly committed to Ohio State or projected to Ohio State, in the case of Marquise Lightfoot, who had been projected to Ohio State, or Justin Scott and Jordan Lyle, who flipped from Ohio State. The defensive tackle transfer Marley Cook came down to Miami versus Ohio State. He picked Miami. I'm sure there's nothing Ohio State fans would love more than to try and swipe a guy that Miami is trying to grab. But I feel cautiously optimistic, okay? Now, Eric D., our guy who is he's up in Alabama, he says, Donno, trust me, Auburn is in this. Yeah, Auburn. Here's the thing about Auburn. I look at this two different ways. I definitely, from a recruiting standpoint and a transfer portal standpoint, I really respect there's a lot of financial muscle behind Auburn. And, Hugh Freeze is willing to do just about anything to land a player. So I have no doubts about that. But I don't really trust a lot of the insiders who report on Auburn. Now, the guy that I trust the most, and I mean this with 1,000,000% sincerity, is Zach Blackerby from Locked On Auburn. He does an incredible job, and he's very responsible with the way he reports. But it's some of the people from like their recruiting services and stuff. They always seem to think Auburn's getting everybody. So sometimes it just becomes white noise when you hear about Auburn this, Auburn that. You never know what's real or not with them. You don't always know which reporters over there you can trust, okay? Now, speaking of possible transfer quarterbacks, there's a lot being written today because a Maryland newspaper wrote an article about Taulia Tagovailoa, Tua's younger brother, and they brought up, because they're hearing from, people close to the Tagovailoa family, that Taulia and Tua would be interested in playing in the same city. And by the way, that's something we talked about a couple weeks ago on this show. So we were actually a little ahead of the curve on that one at Locked On Canes. Now, Taulia, as we've known for the past several days, he's opted out of Maryland's bowl game because he's either, trying to go pro. And unfortunately for him, he's probably looking at undrafted free agent status. I don't expect Taulia to be drafted. He'll get a tryout. He'll get on a roster somewhere as a UFA, but I don't think he's going to get drafted. He's also considering the option of transferring, but he technically doesn't have any eligibility left. So he would have to get a waiver. And even in that Maryland newspaper that wrote about it, they think a waiver is unlikely because he doesn't really check off any of the boxes for a waiver. Nick Saban might have screwed him a little bit because the reason why he's not eligible for another year is his first season at Alabama before he transferred to Maryland. He was used in 5 games, which was one more than the redshirt limit. And I don't remember him getting any meaningful game time. So Saban was just like, whatever, man, go out there, play 5 times, burn the red shirt. Who cares? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. If he played meaningful games back then, I can't recall it. That might just be a terrible long-term memory on my part. But yeah. So, but the thing is, I haven't heard really from the Miami side a lot of buzz about Taulia Tagovailoa. Like it would obviously be really interesting. You know, the Tagovailoa family is very close-knit and very tight. I'm sure that they would love the opportunity to have Tua and Taulia playing football in the same city. I just think, again, Miami seems pretty focused right now on trying to get this Cam Ward thing over the finish line. Man, we have a lot to talk about, guys. I'm opening up the mailbag on this episode. We got some awesome questions that I want to answer from the Locked On Canes Insiders chat. You guys maybe do some research on this one. Early enrollees. Which members of Miami's class of 2024 are going to be able to play in spring football? Who's enrolling in January and who's not? Because, spoiler alert, there's more players who are enrolling than not enrolling. Who do I think are the Miami Hurricanes freshmen, true freshmen that are going to make the biggest impact in their first season at Miami? And Florida State suing the ACC. The ACC suing Florida State. There's a couple ways you can look at this from a Miami fan. You can just kick your feet up, get your popcorn out, and watch the chaos. Or you can realize that however this thing gets resolved, good, bad, or ugly, there's going to be an impact and a trickle down onto our Miami Hurricanes. So, folks, we have so much to get to. Keep it locked right here. We're only getting started on this new episode of Locked On Canes. I can't tell you what a pleasure it is knowing that if I need or want last-minute tickets to a sporting event, I can find them and get the best deals at Game Time. Game Time is an incredible app. You log on to Game Time. They've got all the big sporting events, concerts, musical theater, comedy shows right in your area, right there in front of you on your home screen, and you're getting the best possible prices even an hour before the event starts. In some cases, even an hour after the event starts, you can still get your tickets on Game Time. And guys, on the Game Time app, you can view exactly what you're going to see from your seat. They're going to show you the configurations. You know, sometimes if you're going to a concert, you're not sure how's the angle to the stage. You're going to know exactly what you're going to be looking like because they have photos and interactive features right there on the Game Time app. Like I was looking today, guys, at the Game Time app. You can get tickets for Miami Heat hosting the Atlanta Hawks tonight for as low as $41. You want to watch the Florida Panthers host the Vegas Golden Knights Stanley Cup rematch tomorrow night, $31 you can get in the door at Game Time. And they have something called the Game Time Guarantee where you know you're getting the best possible price because if you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So you have nothing to lose. Download the Game Time app. Create an account and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Thank you so much for making this live episode of Locked On Canes your first listen today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. Again, I'm cautiously optimistic that Miami is moving things in a positive direction with Cam Ward and that the Washington State transfer, he's been our number one target, certainly a favorite here on Locked On Canes, that he could end up giving the Miami Hurricanes some good news in the short term. Obviously, if for whatever reason things do not work out there, we know Miami has shown some interest in KJ Jefferson. It seems like Miami has fallen way behind USC for Will Howard, but I don't believe he's made that commitment official yet. He's someone else Miami has really liked. And yeah, we brought up this article written in Maryland about Taulia Tagovailoa trying to get a waiver to transfer somewhere and, potentially looking at Miami as an option. So obviously I feel pretty good about where things stand with Cam Ward, but the search doesn't necessarily end there if for whatever reason things do not get over the finish line. Okay. All right. So I want to answer some questions. And guys, if you want to stay interactive all day, every day with Locked On Canes, take your everyday experience to the next level. Join our exclusive Locked On Canes Insiders chat. I include the link in the show description below to join Locked On Canes Insiders. You can send text directly from my phone to yours, vice versa. I give you guys breaking news, recruiting scoops, Q&As, and I'm glad Hoodie Girl is in the building. We are going to have an Avengers Assemble episode tomorrow. Hoodie Girl, Chalupa Batman are going to join me. We're going to do a live episode tomorrow, 2 p.m. And Omar, I did give this a thought. Taulia and Tua in Miami. He'll do great at FIU. Honestly, I did give that a thought because, again, Miami right now has the Hurricanes have their sights set on a different quarterback. If Taulia wants to be in the same city with Tua, there is another Division I college football team in the same city. I'm just saying, okay? All right, so I want to answer some questions here from Locked On Canes Insiders. We get one from Explorer Sam. He says, hey, QB question that everyone's going to have. Where are we with Cam Ward? Are we confident that the 2024 QB1 will be Cam or KJ Jefferson? He's saying, obviously, I'm assuming Jakari won't be here, he says. If Jakari balls out in the bowl game, though, is he our QB1? So obviously, I already talked about the Cam Ward side of things. And yeah, KJ Jefferson is someone that Miami has reportedly shown some interest in. I can't guarantee you that next year's starting quarterback is one of those guys. I will also say, because again, sometimes when I talk about these transfer portal quarterbacks, people are like, why do you hate Jakari Brown so much? You never talk about him. Like, I talk about the news. It's obvious Miami has been looking at quarterbacks outside the program. When it comes to Brown, I'm a huge fan. Great young man. You guys may have seen it. I had a chance to interview him in person right before the season started. You can find that episode from back in August here on Locked On Canes. I want to see Jakari go out there on the 28th against Rutgers, and I want to see him play like he did against Georgia Tech last year, where he looked fantastic or even better. And I'd love him to stick around. And remember, guys, Jakari's still young, right? He's going to be a redshirt sophomore next year. When we talk about bringing someone in like Cam Ward, that's for a 1-year quarterback. Go out there, play your best. Miami's going to try to win 10, 11, 12, 15 games next year with an experienced guy like a Cam Ward under center. Hopefully Brown, even if they do bring in someone else, would stick around because, 2025, he's only going to be a junior then. So there could still be an opportunity here. But I want what's best for Jakari, and I am a fan of his, lest anyone think otherwise, okay? Let's see. That was from Explorer Sam. We got one this morning from Jake, who says, early this morning, he says, hey, it's 7:17 a.m. Do you know where your quarterback is? I don't yet. I hope we find him this weekend. Dan says, is the staff happy with what we have at quarterback right now? I can't speak for the staff, okay? But the fact that they are clearly looking at bringing in an upperclassman grad transfer for 1 year would make you say they're not completely satisfied with what Miami has in the room right now. And also, there's not a lot in the room, right? I mean, you only have 2 scholarship quarterbacks, right? I mean, Judd Anderson's going to be on campus in a few weeks, but as a true freshman. But right now, you only have 2 quarterbacks on scholarship, both very inexperienced. And the third guy coming in is going to be even less experienced than the other 2 guys. So I'm not going to say they're not happy with what they have in the quarterback room, but they're not satisfied with what they have in the quarterback room. They're looking for someone who can, lead Miami to a really special season this coming year. Okay. Andy asks, do you think it's getting a little bit too late for a quarterback? Well, obviously no, because your top target is still available. So it's not too late yet. Until that top target is no longer available, if he doesn't come to you, then it's too late. It's certainly not too late right now. And by the way, be like our guy Jacoby down there and smash that like button and subscribe. And I also agree with IMAX here, who says, hey, as long as Alonzo Highsmith is on staff, I'm not worried about quarterback. I'm not worried about talent evaluation in general, because Alonzo Highsmith is a guy who did it for about 2 decades in the NFL front office as a scout and an assistant GM before he came back to his alma mater to do a similar job at the college level at Miami. We get a question from Storm Life, who says, hey, is anybody sitting out the bowl game for Miami? Yes, and you guys can correct me if I'm leaving anybody out here, but the guys who are leaving for the NFL are they're not going to play in the bowl game. Matt Lee has opted out of the bowl game, so I would imagine Ryan Rodriguez is probably going to be Miami's starting center in the bowl game. We know the defensive backfield is going to look different because Cam Kinchins and James Williams are not expected to play. Javion Cohen is not going to play on the offensive line. He's off to the NFL, so I think Matthew McCoy is going to be the next man up in the starting offensive line, and we like him a lot. I think he's going to be great, on the 28th, and he's going to be great next year as well. So, the guys who are, and then obviously, all the seniors who are leaving, but as in terms of, guys with eligibility left, the ones who have opted to take their talents to the National Football League will not be playing in the Pinstripe Bowl. We get a question from our guy Trelvis, and I've seen Trelvis in the live chat today as well. He says, good morning, brother. I believe Mario was asked about early enrollees. How many? Not certain I heard the answer. I would love to know who is expected to be there in January. Now Mario, in his press conference, he said 26 to 28 enrolled in January, but he was, with that number, he was talking about the combination of new recruits and transfers. So obviously, what was Miami's recruiting class? 27 guys after Armando Blunt signed in. So that's going to be including transfers. But I have been doing some research on which players are like the true freshmen coming in, class of 2024s, which players are coming in early and which aren't. Now, they all want to be here early. Like nobody who Miami just signed is like, yeah, I'll come in the summer. Like they all want to be here early, but the issue is some of the private schools do not allow early graduation. So there are a handful of players who cannot be here early just because their high school does not allow them to graduate in December. Okay. So I think everyone is enrolling early except for the players from St. Thomas Aquinas. I don't believe they're able to graduate early. That includes Chance Robinson, Jordan Lyle, Ryan Mack, OJ Frederic. I was told by one of those fellow commits that Juan Minaya also cannot, the offensive lineman. He goes to a private school in New Jersey. Apparently, he is not available to enroll early either. One of the fellow recruits told me that he will not be able to come in early. And I believe Justin Scott, the 5-star defensive tackle, also will not be able to enroll early. I'm not 100% sure that's everybody who isn't coming in early, but I'm pretty sure that's everybody. So like you're talking about like 21, 22 of the freshman enrollees. Oh, okay. So thank you. Yella says Artavius Jones as well. Okay. So that may be, I think you may be right about that. So there's going to be like around 20, 21 guys who are coming in early. Only a handful are not, and they all want to be here. It just depends on, their various high schools do not allow everybody to graduate early. Oh man, I feel like we're going to leave so many questions unanswered today, but I got to talk about Cairn University, aka Florida State. Obviously they've been complaining a lot for the last couple of weeks. All right, not getting into the college football playoff, and now they are tooth and nail. They are fighting to get out of the ACC, and I'll tell you how Florida State's legal battle against the Atlantic Coast Conference, how it affects the University of Miami and all the fans out there. We will get to that and so much more. We're not done yet on this episode of Locked On Canes. And we are definitely not done on FanDuel. So many good games coming up this weekend. UCF and Georgia Tech tonight in the Gasparilla Bowl. We got NFL football on Saturday and Sunday, NBA, NHL. There's so much happening. And guys, if you want to kick off your NFL season, and as the weather gets colder out there, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, There's no better time to get in on the action than right now. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads. Miami Dolphins are 1.5 favorites, -1.5 against Dallas this weekend. You got the player props out there. Tyreek Hill, what's he going to do? Over-unders and so much more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Now, yeah, I jokingly referred to Florida State as Karen University. They've been doing a lot of complaining. I know the Florida State fans, because you're going to find this video. You're like, what is this guy? He hates us. Why is he talking so bad about us? Listen, honestly, I have a certain amount of empathy. I did think Florida State should have gotten into the college football playoff. And you know what? I want to get out of the ACC. I'm kind of hoping Florida State finds a way out. I'm being honest here. I'm kind of hoping that Florida State University finds a way out of the Atlantic Coast Conference. So Florida State has gone guns blazing this morning. They're suing the ACC. They have basically declared the ACC's grant of rights to be fraudulent, and they are challenging it in court. They allege, quote, chronic fiduciary mismanagement and bad faith in the way the ACC handled their media rights agreement and undermined its members' revenue opportunities. They're also accusing the ACC of a breach of contract and failure to perform. And guys, there's one way you can look at this, and this is what the ACC has come back at Florida State with. The ACC is also suing Florida State, by the way. So there's lawsuits going in both directions right now. The ACC says, hey, you signed the grant of rights. Every team in this conference signed it, according to them, happily or without complaint, and they weren't under duress or anything. But Florida State makes some interesting allegations about, basically, again, the ACC not negotiating in good faith when these schools sign that agreement. A little bit of deception in the way the TV partnership works with ESPN, and with the ACC operating in the interest of self-preservation for the conference and not in the best interest of the member institutions, okay? And that, this grant of rights agreement is causing big major brands like Florida State, and I would also include brands like, Miami and Clemson and North Carolina, of, being unable to reach their revenue potential because of that grant of rights agreement that we are supposedly stuck in until 2036. So, all right, first of all, my prediction on where this is going, okay? The ACC has told Florida State, if you want out, it's going to cost you $572 million to get out. Obviously, that's not a realistic fee that the ACC or anybody could pay just to leave a like they can't and will not pay $572 million. Like, they can't even keep their recruits locked in with NIL deals. How are they supposed to pay $572 million? So I feel like Florida State, with their lawsuit, they want to get the ACC to a negotiating table, and they want to figure out a more realistic and attainable buyout, right? That Florida State, deep down inside, they know we're not getting out of this for free. It's going to cost us something. The ACC knows they're not really going to pay us $572 million. Do they split the difference? Does Florida State pay a third, a half, 2/3, if they're even able to raise that kind of money? Also, I've got questions as a resident of the state of Florida. Like, what sort of resources are they using financially to sue the ACC? Is this taxpayer money? Like, where is this? I've got some questions as someone who lives in the state. Okay. But as far as how this concerns Miami fans, okay. Once you take this step that Florida State has taken to sue your conference, and then we're living in a world where the ACC is suing their reigning conference champion, which is just wild, like the way that this is turning out. This is going to end in a divorce. Like, I don't expect Florida State to be, I think 2025 is the absolute earliest they could leave. Like, at some point in the next couple of years, Florida State is going to find a way out of this conference. So, for someone who roots for Miami, how should you feel about this? Okay, this affects you. This affects all of us, because if Florida State finds a way out of the conference and other teams stay in the ACC, the conference is weakened. Okay. This puts you even farther behind what we're now calling the Power Two, right? The Power Two being the SEC expanding and the expanding Big Ten. Like if Florida State leaves the conference, it puts the ACC in an even weaker position. It affects you in that regard. And if you're a Miami football fan, you have to wonder if Florida State leaves the ACC with maybe the Big Ten being the most likely destination. I know people will say, well, they're not AAU. They don't have the AAU. Listen, that's not going to be a deal breaker. The Big Ten, if they really wanted Florida State, they would find a way around that. I think it's already been debunked. The idea that the AAU designation is a must to get in the Big Ten, I think that's already been debunked. So if Florida State manages to leave the ACC, what does that mean for the annual rivalry? I mean, it's almost a century long every year, Miami versus Florida State in football. That would put that in jeopardy, right? Assuming you don't end up in the same, maybe you would, maybe someday Miami ends up in the same conference, but that puts our yearly rivalry in jeopardy. I would hate to lose that. That's one of the great traditions of my life. I love watching Miami versus Florida State every single year. And then most importantly, if Florida State finds a way out of the ACC paying, let's say, a fraction of the exit fee, right, that they wouldn't have to pay $572 million, they'd have to pay something significantly less than that, and they leave. Do the floodgates open, right? Because I would like to believe that schools like Miami and Clemson and North Carolina are now sitting back and saying, okay, let's see what they do. Let's see. Does this get completely shot down in court? Does Florida State lose, come back with their tail between their legs? Or if they find a way out, can we now follow them out through that same path, right? Is Florida State about to set the precedent as to how to get out of the ACC? Would not shock me whatsoever if within the next 3 to 5 years, this conference ceases to exist, that it completely implodes. And folks, that's the reason why the ACC is fighting this thing so hard, because the ACC knows if Florida State is able to get out without paying significant financial penalty, if they're able to get out at a discount, handful of other schools are going to follow that same road that they paved. Oh, man. All right, guys. I do want to answer some more of you guys' questions on the next episode. It's been busy. It's been loaded. Hopefully, within the next few days, Miami Hurricanes have a new starting quarterback. I think we would all, if things are trending in a positive direction here, we would all love to see Cam Ward get introduced as a new starting quarterback, a new quarterback at the University of Miami. If you're watching us on YouTube, smash that like button and subscribe to our channel. If you listen to the audio version, make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Odyssey, wherever you get your pods. And I'll wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy Holidays, but we're going to be back before Christmas Day. We're going to have an episode tomorrow, at least one episode tomorrow with Chalupa Batman and Hoodie Girl. The Avengers will be assembling tomorrow, and if news breaks, Locked On Canes will be there for you. So we'll talk to you next time on another episode of Locked On Canes, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.